Alright, I suppose I should give an update on this thing. It's been on my YouTube channel for a while, and it's had some mods done to it since its initial introduction. So this, despite what that marker says, is not a J200. It is in fact a mutt. The main part of it is a J20 from 1979. It's got pieces on it from the 1960s. I've shortened the wheelbase 12 inches. I've shortened the bed. It was a 7-foot bed. This was a 7-foot bed. It came with an 8-foot bed. It's now 6'3". You can tell by the scar here. It's been sectioned, not very prettily, but it has a backing strip behind that weld. Right now it's down because I am repainting a wheel. I recently altered the rear brakes. Those were not stock. Using lug nut 4x4s, drum to disc conversions for J20. And the original brackets that I bought from him came with 8 holes. Jeeps mount with 7. They leave the top hole out, or the top bolt out. And the problem I was having was it was mounting the calipers clocked way further down. I'm trying to get my finger in the shot. The center of the caliper was about here, the bottom bolt was about here. So I called him back, told him what the problem was, because if I mounted them in the upper position, this caliper bolt would run right into my leaf spring pack. The leaf spring pack is another story. I'll get into that when I have time. So he cut another set of holes and another set of brackets, sent them to me. I finally got them on. I've had them for years. And they work fine. I've been fighting hub seal problems and other issues. Another problem I complained about was the rear brakes locking up prematurely whenever I hit the brakes on ice and in quadra-track full-time 4-wheel drive. That's not the stock switch cover, but it does have a stock switch behind it. Normally it drives in limited slip 4-wheel drive, and then you start spinning on ice, you put it in emergency drive, and it locks the front and rear drive shafts basically together. There's a drive chain in the transfer case. There's also a low range on it. When I would lock this in emergency drive, the rear brakes locking up went away. So that's telling me that somehow there was a torque differential going on between the front and the rear. And through puzzling it out, I figured out that the proportioning valve that's included in the Jeep J20 combination valve was not working. There are 3 valves. I gotta find the pieces. I think it's over here somewhere. Oh, here they are. So here's what you're going to be looking at. It's going to be mounted this way on the inside of the driver's side frame rail. You're going to have a line out of there to your rear. There's nothing on the bottom. Well, okay, that goes to your front. That goes to your front. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think that's right. That's front, that's front. This is your inlet for the front. This is your inlet for the rear. This is your over-centering and emergency brake switch. There's a plunger inside that pushes a contact up in that switch, sends a little brake warning light. This is the rear end. This has the proportioning valve in it. It delays apply pressure when you slam on the brakes to the rear. There's also a delay valve. This is for the front. That stem sticks out the front of the combination valve body. That's right, that's what the front hole is for. Yeah, that's way too taken apart for me to remember off the top of my head. So that little stem is right there. And that spring is super heavy duty. And basically what it does is when you have a disc drum setup, you hit the brakes, your front discs will want to apply faster than the rears because the rears have spring resistance. So this is to delay pressure from going through here. I can't even compress it with my fingers. Well, even if I tried, I couldn't. It's impossible to do with one hand. So if you cut that spring, you have instant front apply and instant rear apply. If you replace the... If you get in there and you can get to it, and I'm not even sure if I can get on it from here. Oh, that's a trail. It's back up in there. And you've got to loosen a bunch of stuff and then mess things up. And then do a double flare on whatever you messed up. And I'll tell you right now, the double flare kits are garbage. Every single one you buy that has the little tiny dies in it. That's not clutter. It's supposed to be there. The 1/4-inch die, which is what these rears are, the stem is too thin. That will not adequately center the 1/4-inch tubing. And what that allows is for your, this basically balloons the end of the tube, and then you use the V end, or the indentation end, to flatten it into basically a trumpet shape. And it has 2 layers of steel in there. So what I did was I took the second biggest one. It has basically the same forming area, and I filed down the stem so it fits in a 1/4-inch tube. I put the flats on it so I could lock it in a vise. And I did it by hand. And after practicing a couple times, I figured out where to put pressure and where not to. And I got a non-leaking rear brake line, double flared. Okay, the engine has been recently replaced. The one on the stand here was in it for a while. It's a 360. It's probably got 100,000 plus more miles on it. I couldn't even begin to say because it's been in 3 or 4 vehicles. It's been in this truck about twice since I built it in 2009 to 2010. It's had 3 transmissions behind it, all of them rebuilt by me, and I'm not a mechanic. I just play one in my garage. So this is a 401 that my dad and I rebuilt in 1999, late 98, early 99. And it was in my other truck for quite a number of years until rust killed it. It was a 4-door concoction of a Wagoneer and a J20 that I had put together in 2004 to 2005 when I still had small kids. Now my kids are driving, and one of them has a Jeep truck and the other one has a Subaru. And so this motor came out of the 4-door that rust had killed a few years ago, and I rebuilt it the summer before last, the second time with my dad, me doing most of the work. It really didn't need anything but bearings and rings and to rehone the cylinders. They were all within spec. They were about 1.5 thousandths oversized from the piston, measured the proper way. This thing seals better now than it did when it was machined by the machine shop in 1998. We put the same exact pistons, rods, and crank back in it, and it always had a problem burning oil. It always smelled like burning oil when it was running, and it would burn about 1 quart every 100 miles. I changed a couple of things on it, and it dropped that to about every 200 miles. This doesn't burn any oil. It's had the same oil in it for about 2 months now. It's been parked probably off and on half of that time, and it hasn't gone down a drop. It's still right above the full, and it's still yellow. It's got, I don't know how to do lights. Yeah, okay, let's try that. I don't speak symbol, so it takes me a minute. This is a mess, but there are 2004 or 2005 Hedman 4-into-1 headers there. They were on my, well, they were on the same engine in my other truck. The dual snorkel setup is kind of custom. You've seen the front of the truck in the other videos. This has LED headlights put in it. like in the last 2 years. The screen is there to not overpressure the carburetor at high speeds, if that makes sense. Look into aerodynamics. High velocity airflow going into a turbine engine in a fighter jet. They actually have air deflectors in the air intakes because a jet turbine cannot ingest supersonic air. Don't ask me why, but because I have a copy of a Carter AFB on here made by a certain company, Weber, and it's been tagged Edelbrock. It says do not submit the top of the carburetor to open air or high pressure air, because it's an air-weighted air valve system for the secondaries. I guess I can show you that maybe. It doesn't like air blowing directly on it. Ding. So your secondaries open the same rate as the primaries, but you've got a air valve in there, and when the engine feels airflow is sufficient, that air valve basically flips open, and you get a huge kick in the seat, and you can watch your gas gauge needle go down incrementally. I do that very rarely because I'm not 30 anymore. I don't need to prove anything to myself. Proving the engine is good enough. It was never painted this color before. That's kind of in honor of my dad, who passed away before I had a chance to put this in the truck.